10. From the 31-yard line. Morton with those speedy receivers, Allworth and Hayes to the right. Hayes out of the backfield. He comes with the screen to Dwayne Thomas. Thomas fumbles the football.
Well, hello. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to check out this video. And welcome to the Gridiron. And before we get started, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone out there who's watching my videos. Thank you. If you can maybe give this video a thumbs up or possibly leave a comment below or maybe share this video. It would mean so much to me. But just anyway, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to check out this video. Thank you. Well, sad day yesterday. We lost another true giant. Not only among men, but just a true giant. I haven't heard from Sam Huff. Sometimes you know, even after they retire and all and everything, they they'll do interviews or they'll be on TV or this or that or something. They'll just do stuff to keep busy. And from time to time, you'll see them on TV or hear about them, whatever. But I hadn't heard seen them or heard from them I guess close to almost 10 years. And so then when things like that happen with older ball players, sometimes you forget about them, or maybe you think did he pass away or this or that, and it was just kind of one of those things. And when I seen, Sam Huff died, it's like wow, and it's like starting to it's like wow, that's right, yeah, I haven't heard from him in a while. So apparently he had been suffering from dementia for a while, so he was kind of out of the public's eye. But that was pretty much the case. But I tell you what, it kind of shook me. I mean, he retired after 1969 season. I started watching pro football in 1970, so I never actually got to see him play, especially much less for the Giants. He played for the Giants up until 1963. I was born in 1964, so the second I was born, he wasn't with the Giants anymore. So, but I mean, there's some very memorable seasons the Giants had, and he was a huge part of that, especially on the defense. He was a very good athlete, especially in college. He played guard, offensive guard, and defensive tackle at West Virginia. West Virginia retired his number 75. Okay, he was an All-American in 1955, the year before he got drafted. Right, the Giants drafted him in the third round of the 1956 NFL draft. Now, when he went to training camp, the coach Jimmy Lee Howe was kind of having a hard time trying to unfortunately, find where to put him. They had him in on a defensive line, maybe as a defensive tackle, but apparently he was a little too light. They wanted somebody with obviously a little more weight to him. He played guard, in college, but apparently, I was reading, he was a little too slow to be a professional football guard. Now, maybe he was good enough in college to be a guard, but when he come to the pros, he wasn't quite good enough. So, Jimmy Howe is kind of you're a good athlete, but I just don't know kind of where to put you, And didn't sit real well with Sam. He got a little frustrated, I guess, and he kind of packed his bags and he left. It was almost over before it started. He got to the airport, and we had a guy by the name of, somebody might have heard of, our offensive coordinator, Vince Lombardi. There's a Super Bowl trophy named after him. Well, he was our offensive coordinator. All right, Tom Landry was our defensive coordinator. You're not going to convince me otherwise. It's the greatest coaching staff, offensive defense coordinator of all time, bar none. Absolutely not. Vince Lombardi, offensive coordinator, Tom Landry, defensive coordinator. Those two became head coaches, and bar none, we let them both go. Anyway, that's a different story. So Vince Lombardi met him at the airport. He kind of convinced him, because he was in a small town in West Virginia. It was a coal mining country, and he said, why don't you come back? give it a try. It's going to be better than the coal mines. I can promise you that. So Sam Huff took him for his word. Put his bags back in the car and came back to training camp. So I say the rest is history. Now, Sam, when in college, was always always had three. Always had his 2 feet obviously on the ground, but always had a third. His hand in the dirt. Always was down. Being a guard or defensive tackle. Well, Tom Landry, the coach, the Giants used to run like a 5-2. I know, like 5 guys across the front and 2 linebackers. Well, he changed things up. Now, this way, he started the first pretty much 4-3 defense. Right, the object of the 4 defensive linemen was to keep Sam Huff clear. Okay, so he could roam because he was the middle linebacker, roam and make the tackle. So you had Rosie Greer and Dick Modulewski were the 2 tackles. You got Andy Robustelli and Jim Kakavich were the 2 ends. Okay, those 4 guys kept Sam Huff clear, right? So Sam Huff could roam around and make the tackles. So it was like for the first time that Sam Huff actually played football. He only had just his 2 feet on him. He was standing up. He could see everything, and he was perfect for it. Absolutely perfect for it. So Coach Landry had him. At the time he was the backup. Okay. But he taught him, the 4-3 defense, and actually sometimes after the training, the practice was over for the day, they would go to Tom Landry's apartment at nighttime, and he would teach them some of the techniques and all that and everything. Tom Landry was a very good coach. At the beginning of the season, Sam Huff was the backup middle linebacker, right? He was behind starter Ray Beck, okay? Well, on the second game of the season, on October 7, 1956, they were playing in Chicago against the Chicago Cardinals. Ray Beck got hurt. Huff took his place, okay? And pretty much the rest was history because Sam Huff embarked on a 150-game consecutive playing streak. It was kind of like Wally Pipp and Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig took Wally Pipp's spot, and Lou Gehrig continued on to play over 2,000 straight games. So, back then you played for 150 straight games. They played 6 preseason games. In the beginning, he was playing 12 regular season games. But so he played a lot. He played a lot of games, and you play 150, back then, that's saying something. Look at the Giants. We can't even get a wide receiver to run a route without pulling his hamstring. You got Sam Huff playing the middle linebacker, playing 150 games in a row. Simply remarkable. All right, so he took his spot, and he started the streak on 150 games in a row. They lost the game against the Cardinals, but after that, once Sam Huff was the starting middle linebacker, the Giants won 5 games in a row. This is 1956, right? They finished the season 8-3-1, okay? And they would go on to play in the NFL championship. And he became the first rookie middle linebacker to start in a NFL championship game. And that year they played against the Bears in Yankee Stadium. Okay, that was the first year they played in Yankee Stadium. Before that, they were playing in the Polo Grounds. But anyway, 1956 championship game, Yankee Stadium. The Giants won 47-7. Right, Sam Huff was the middle linebacker. The next season, 1957, they stumbled a little bit. They fell to 7-5. Didn't make the playoffs. Unfortunately, one of the problems they had was they were in the same division with the Browns. Back then, the Browns were very good. And in 1957, I'm going to say to me, all right, if you ask me, you can ask some other people too, they'll give you the same answer. 1957, the greatest running back of all time entered pro football. That was Jim Brown. All right, so he became the running back for the Cleveland Browns. So they had a great backfield, right? So they were very good, and they became even tougher in 1957. Okay, so the Giants wound up in second place. They didn't make the playoffs. 1958, they finished 9-3. Okay, they went to the championship game, which was called the greatest game ever played. All right, the Giants lost that game to the Baltimore Colts. 23-17. They lost in overtime. Now that game was, absolutely spectacular. Between the owners, coaches, and players on the field, okay, there were 17 gentlemen, okay, that went into the Hall of Fame from the 1958 NFL Championship game. Tim Mara, the owner of the Giants, Wellington Mara, the vice president of the Giants, they're in the Hall of Fame. The two coaches, all right, Vince Lombardi, Tom Landry. Then you got Don Maynard, all right. You got Roosevelt Brown. You got Frank Gifford, I'm sorry. You have Emlyn Tunnell, Sam Huff, Andy Robustelli. So the Giants had 10 guys, okay. You go over to the Colts, their coach, Weeb Eubank, all right. Then you had Lenny Moore. You had Jim Parker, their tackle, who was very good. Raymond Berry, Johnny Unitas, Gino Marchetti, and Art Donovan. I got all 17. That's 17 guys from the 1958 NFL Championship game. They're in the Hall of Fame. They ain't happening nowadays. But it was a great game. The Giants lost 1958. 1959, they won the division again. They were 10-2. Okay, they went to the championship game and they lost to the Baltimore Colts once again, 31-16. 1960, they wound up. They really stumbled. They were 6-4-2. Okay, the Eagles won the division that year, and the Eagles won the championship game. All right. Then 1961, 1962, and 1963, the Giants won first place. All right, Sam Huff was a vital part of that. Okay, they went to the championship all 3 games. 1961, they were 10-3-1. They lost 37-0 to the Packers in the championship game. 1962, the Giants were 12-2, and they lost to, arguably, some people argue that 1962 Green Bay Packers were the greatest team of all time. Okay, the Giants were 12-2. The Green Bay Packers were 13-1. Okay, the Green Bay Packers won 16-7 in Yankee Stadium. Okay, 1963, the Giants were 11-3. Once again, they went back to the championship game. They lost 14-10 to the Bears. But 1958, 1959, and 1961, the Giants led the league, okay, in fewest points allowed, mainly because of Sam Huff. Absolutely phenomenal linebacker. All right. After 63, unfortunately, the coach, Ali Sherman, wanted to get younger. I guess Giants had a lot of stars, but they were starting to get a little older, okay? And he wanted to start getting younger. So he started trading off some of his guys, unfortunately, all right? So unfortunately, he traded Sam Huff after the 63 season. So basically in 64, he was a Redskin. He traded him to the Redskins, all right? For Andy Steinkula, all right, and Dick James. Andy Steinkula was a defensive tackle, and Rick James was a running back. Dick James was a running back. But Ali Sherman, the coach, said wanted to get younger, so he started just trading off all his starting defensive players. He traded Erich Barnes to the Browns. He traded Dick Modulewski. He traded linebacker Cliff Livingston. He traded Rosie Greer in 1962. He's a defensive tackle. He traded them to the Rams. He traded the linebacker Sam Huff to the Washington Redskins. So he just started trading off all his players. And some of the guys he traded away, and other guys after the 64 season retired, like Frank Gifford, Wyatt Tittle. You know what I mean? So the team was like totally different, like going into the mid-60s. All right. So after 1963, he was a Washington Redskin. So from 64 to 1967, he played for the Washington Redskins. All right. 1967, he injured his ankle, and his streak of 150 consecutive games was over. After the 67 season was over, okay, he retired. So he retired for 1 year. In 1969, okay, a guy, once again, kind of go full circle, a guy named Vince Lombardi started coaching the Washington Redskins in 1969. All right, he gave Sam Huff a call, see if Sam Huff would mind coming out of retirement to play, and Sam Huff did. He was kind of like a player and a coach, but he was a starting middle linebacker. So he came out of retirement and he played again in 1969. Okay, basically pretty much because of Coach Lombardi. If it wasn't for Lombardi, he would have stayed retired. But after he got traded, after Sam Huff got traded to the Washington Redskins, he never forgave Alijah Sherman, the coach of the Giants, for trading him. Sam Huff wanted to finish his career as a Giant, and Alijah Sherman said no. So he never forgave him. And a game on November 27th, 1966, okay, a game in Washington, okay, the Giants, 66. Giants 1966 were 112-1. They gave up over 500 points in 14 games. Anyway, they were losing 69-41 to the Redskins. The Redskins had the ball deep in Giants territory, okay, and as time was running down, if you listen to Sam Huff talk about this, the Redskins were in field goal position. Sam Huff called timeout to stop the clock. He had the kicker, all right, Charlie Gogolak. We had his brother Pete. We had Pete. They had Charlie Gogolak as the kicker. Okay, so we had his brother Pete. But anyway, the Redskins kicker was Charlie Gogolak. He sent him onto the field. Okay, and he kicked a very short field goal to make the final score 72-41, the most points ever scored in a regular season game was 72 points. And that 72-41 is the most points ever combined in a game, period, in the NFL. The Chicago Bears beat the Washington Redskins in a championship game in the early 40s, 73-0. Okay, so that's the most points ever scored in an NFL game. But in a regular season game, the Redskins scored 72 points against the 1966 New York Giants. And basically they scored the 72 points was because of Sam Huff calling timeout and sending the field goal unit onto the field. I mean, you'll never see that in today's game. I mean, there's too much sportsmanship for the most part going on. You know what I mean? But he never forgave him. Never ever forgave him. So I said, so after 67, he got hurt. He retired. He came back. He played one more season. And Vince Lombardi led them in 1969, Vince Lombardi led the Redskins to a 7-5-2 record. That was the first winning record that the Washington Redskins had since 1955. So Vince Lombardi knew how to coach, and Sam Huff was part of that once again. But after 69, he retired. Okay, now he would go on he would be the color commentary for the Giants on the radio team for 3 years, okay, in the very early 70s. Okay. After that, starting in 1975, okay, he moved over to the Redskins radio network, okay, and from 1975, okay, to 2012, he was part of their team, okay, and he retired after the 2012 season, so he was on the air there for 38 seasons as part of the Redskins radio network, so that kept him busy. After I love his accomplishments. He went to 6 NFL championship games. Okay, he would have. He became the first rookie, as I said, to start a championship game as a middle linebacker. He had all kinds of records. In 1960, he was the subject of a CBS TV special called The Violent World of Sam Huff. It was like about an hour long. You could find it on YouTube if you wanted to. He donned the cover of Time magazine in 1959. I think he was the second guy. Okay, I think Bobby Lane, quarterback from the Detroit Lions, was the other one to be. I think he was the first ever to be on a Time magazine cover, but Sam Huff was the second. Okay. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler from 1958 to 1961. He was a Pro Bowler 4 straight years for the Giants. And his first season with the Redskins, he was a Pro Bowler in 1964. So the first year with the Redskins, their defense became the second best in all of the NFL. So he had a major impact on their defense. I mean, they still had a losing record, but their defense got a lot better. He was a 2-time All-Pro after the 58 and 59 season. He was on the NFL All-50s decade team. Okay, he was in the Redskins Ring of Fame. Okay, he was honored there. He's in the New York Giants Ring of Honor. Okay, he was a Pro Football. The NFL Hall of Fame class of 1982. All right, so he's got a lot. All right, accolades going for him. He played in 168 career games, okay? Now, for the Giants, he played in 102 games. He had 18 interceptions. He had 11 fumble recoveries, and he scored 3 touchdowns for the Giants, all right? But after his career was over, he played 168 games. He had 30 interceptions as a middle linebacker. Pretty impressive. He recovered 17 fumbles, all right, and he scored 5 touchdowns in his career, okay? So he talked the talk, but he walked the walk. He was very, very amazing athlete. In 1959, he was also voted, I think, the best linebacker in all of football as well, too, okay? But after he retired, after 2012, one of the things I was reading is that he started having problems with dementia. And when he was like on the radio, he would start forgetting guys' names, or he would try to start maybe talking about a story about football, something that happened to him in the past, and he couldn't kind of remember, remembering events and dates and all that stuff and everything. So he had to pretty much give it up after the 2012 season. So I mean, that's why you really never kind of heard of him. But so sadly, that's not the main cause of death. But that's why he had to wind up retiring. But I mean, then sadly, yesterday, Sam Huff passed away at the age of 87. Well, as always, guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to check out this video. You guys stay safe out there and go Giants! Woo!